The Belgian prison break by helicopter, Ashraf Sekkaki. Smash the like button, subscribe if you dare, and keep your seatbelt on, because what you're about to hear will make every Hollywood prison escape look weak. The story begins at 4 p.m. on a warm July afternoon in 2009, inside Berkendale prison in Brussels, a place known for concrete walls, iron routines, and the absolute certainty that no one gets out. The guards were relaxed, the yard was quiet, and no alarms had sounded for months. Then, without warning, a low rumble drifted across the sky. At first, the inmates ignored it. Helicopters flew over Brussels all the time. But this one was descending. Fast. And directly toward the prison. A guard on the watchtower leaned forward, confused. Why would any pilot be this close? His radio crackled, but before he could respond, the helicopter clipped the edge of the perimeter wall and spun sideways like something out of an action film. Inside the yard, prisoners froze. Dust rose in a spiral as the helicopter, small, white, and shaking violently, struggled to stay steady. It wasn't landing so much as crashing in slow motion. And standing beneath the spinning blades was a man who'd been waiting for this moment for years. Ashraf Sekkaki. 36 years old. Belgian Moroccan. Career criminal. Master manipulator. A man newspapers would later call the most dangerous prisoner in Belgium. He looked up at the descending machine like someone watching destiny drop out of the sky. The helicopter slammed awkwardly onto the concrete, bouncing once before settling. The pilot, visibly terrified, waved frantically at Sekkaki. The guards hesitated. Was this a movie shoot? A prank? A diplomatic emergency? The confusion bought the crew 5 precious seconds. That was all they needed. 3 men burst out of the aircraft and sprinted toward Ashraf. One carried a handgun. Another held a bolt cutter. The third grabbed Sekkaki by the arm before anyone fully understood what was happening. Inside the control room, alarms finally screamed to life. But by then, the operation was already too far ahead. Guards rushed into the yard, but the helicopter was spinning up again. Blades chopped the air violently, blowing dust into the guards' eyes. The engine roared. The sky darkened with flying debris. A guard shouted, "Stop," but it was useless. The accomplices shoved Sekkaki inside the helicopter. The pilot tried to take off, panicked and trembling, but the craft was overloaded. It lifted barely 2 meters before wobbling. For a second, it looked like it would flip. Prison sirens blared. Radios exploded with commands. One guard drew his weapon, but the risk of hitting another officer was too high. The helicopter lurched sideways, scraping the ground. Then, with a violent surge, it rose, climbing, spinning, tilting. Sekkaki, gripping the edge of the door, looked down at the prison yard shrinking beneath him. For the first time in years, he saw the world beyond the walls. Trees, cars, rooftops. Freedom. But freedom doesn't come without a price. The helicopter's tail whipped dangerously. The pilot shouted something no one could hear. The accomplices held on desperately. Below them, guards scattered like ants. Someone screamed over the radio that the aircraft was unauthorized and possibly explosive. Inside the rising helicopter, Sekkaki felt the full weight of the moment. If this goes wrong, we die right here in midair. But if it goes right, he becomes a legend. The helicopter cleared the final wall and shot forward over the city. Pedestrians looked up, confused, as the wildly swaying machine cut across the skyline. Traffic slowed. Dogs barked. People pointed. Belgium had never seen anything like this. Back in the prison yard, a guard radioed in the words that would shake the justice ministry to its core. Inmate Sekkaki is gone. They took him by helicopter. News alerts erupted. Police sirens wailed across Brussels. Every freeway, train station, and border crossing lit up with surveillance teams. But the escape had taken only 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, Sekkaki vanished into Europe with the precision of a man who had planned every second. What the authorities didn't know yet was that this wasn't just an escape. It was a message. Because inside the abandoned helicopter they would soon find a clue, a chilling sign of what was coming next. And when they opened the cockpit door, they discovered something that changed the direction of the entire investigation. Something no one expected: the hunt across Europe. Belgium went into a state of controlled panic. Within 30 minutes of the escape, police convoys were rolling out of Brussels like a small army. Helicopters scanned the highways. Border agents received emergency alerts. The justice minister called the escape unbelievable, but behind closed doors, officials knew exactly what they were dealing with. Ashraf Sekkaki didn't run without a plan. He never did. Inside the abandoned helicopter, investigators made a chilling discovery. The aircraft had not been stolen, it had been rented. Legally. Under the name of a Belgian couple who had no idea their brief sightseeing excursion would turn into the most embarrassing prison break in Belgian history. The accomplices had hijacked the pilot mid-flight, forced him to detour, and then vanished after dropping Sekkaki in a field outside Brussels. And that's where things went cold. Instantly. The field was empty. No footprints. No vehicles. No witnesses. It was as if the earth had swallowed Sekkaki whole. But this wasn't magic. It was strategy. Because while police searched the countryside, the truth was far worse: Sekkaki wasn't alone. He had escaped with 4 others, all high-risk inmates who had slipped onto the helicopter in the chaos. Among them were violent gang members and even a convicted murderer. Belgium now had 5 fugitives, not 1. Detectives quickly pieced together the aftermath. Witnesses reported seeing a black Mercedes speeding away from a rural road minutes after the helicopter landed. Security cameras caught glimpses of the car at gas stations across Flanders. Inside, blurry silhouettes bent forward, hiding their faces. At 9:40 p.m., the car crossed into the Netherlands. By dawn, the fugitives were gone again. Meanwhile, international media erupted. Headlines blared across Europe. Belgian gangster escapes by helicopter, guards helpless. Sekkaki, mastermind of a Hollywood-style breakout. How did this happen? Belgium demands answers. But behind the noise, detectives were dealing with a far more troubling reality. Sekkaki was not some reckless thug. He was disciplined, patient, and extremely well-connected. Rumors circulated that he had ties to criminal networks in Morocco, France, and Spain. Some whispered that he'd studied past helicopter escapes and perfected the formula. Interpol issued a red notice. Police raids tore through apartments in Antwerp, Rotterdam, and Lille. Every airport flagged their systems. Still nothing. Then, 1 week after the escape, an armored money transport in the Netherlands was robbed with surgical precision. The attackers used military-style weapons, moved with expert coordination, and vanished within 90 seconds. Witnesses identified 2 of the fugitives from Birkendale. The escape wasn't the end. It was the beginning. European police forces scrambled to adjust. The narrative shifted from chaotic jailbreak to organized crime operation. And as the crimes escalated, the pressure intensified. Belgium's prime minister held a televised speech. The justice minister apologized. Prison officials were interrogated. Inside the Birkendale facility, something else was unfolding. Guards who'd been on duty during the escape were cracking under questioning. One admitted he had heard rumors, whispers of inmates talking cryptically about the sky, the wind, freedom arriving from above. Another confessed he'd seen Sekkaki studying the yard at specific times, watching how shadows moved, how guards rotated, how the noise from nearby traffic masked certain sounds. When asked why he didn't report any of this, the guard lowered his eyes. No one wanted to believe he was smarter than us. As days turned into weeks, Belgium began to fear the worst. That Ashraf Sekkaki was already out of Europe. Or worse, preparing something bigger. But on the 20th day of his freedom, a major breakthrough hit the investigation like a lightning bolt. A man in a Brussels cafe used a stolen credit card that belonged to one of the fugitives. Surveillance cameras captured him clearly, tall, athletic build, wearing a baseball cap, checking the window anxiously. Police surrounded the area within minutes. Officers swept the streets, blocked intersections, and scanned every face in the crowd. But when they burst through the cafe doors, the man was gone. All that remained was the credit card on the counter and a napkin scribbled with a single word. Too slow. Sekkaki was taunting them, mocking them. And investigators knew exactly what that meant. He was escalating, planning something bigger, something bolder, something far more dangerous than a helicopter escape. And when police discovered what he had set in motion next, it shocked Europe, the last flight of Ashraf Sekkaki. For nearly a month, Europe held its breath. Every day brought a new rumor, a new sighting, a new headline. But on day 31 of the manhunt, the investigation detonated with a revelation no one expected. Deep in the countryside outside Antwerp, police surrounded a farmhouse after a neighbor reported strange activity at odd hours, trucks arriving at midnight, lights flickering, the faint roar of machinery. Officers approached quietly, rifles raised. Inside, they found it. A workshop. A blueprint board. Maps of Belgium, France, and Spain pinned to the walls. A generator powering industrial tools. And on a workbench, half-finished metal pieces that fit together like puzzle fragments. One officer whispered, "They're building something." The room wasn't just a hideout. It was a staging ground. But Sekkaki and the others were already gone. The discovery pushed authorities into overdrive. They locked down highways, shut down ferry ports, and deployed drones across the border regions. Intelligence analysts worked around the clock, tracing burner phones, intercepted texts, and stolen vehicles. And that's when the truth emerged. Sekkaki was heading for France. Not to hide, but to flee the continent entirely. The car chased through northern France. At dusk, French police spotted a suspicious van speeding through a toll station without stopping. Officers engaged, initiating a pursuit through narrow rural roads. The van swerved, accelerated, and cut through farmland in a desperate attempt to escape. For a moment, it seemed like the fugitives would vanish again. But the chase ended abruptly when the van lost control, skidding into a ditch. Officers surrounded the vehicle, weapons drawn. 3 fugitives were inside. But not Sekkaki. Once again, the mastermind had slipped away. In the back of the van, police discovered duffel bags filled with cash, burner phones, and forged passports bearing new identities, including one with Sekkaki's photograph. Destination printed on the forgery, North Africa. It was no longer a chase. It was a race against an international escape. The final betrayal. With the 3 recaptured inmates in custody, investigators interrogated them through the night. At first, the gang refused to speak. Until one of them broke. Sekkaki had betrayed them. He'd taken the real passport, the real escape vehicle, and the lion's share of the cash. He'd fed them false meeting points in case police captured any of them. And while they fled toward France, he was heading the opposite direction. East. Toward Luxembourg, then Germany, then possibly beyond. Each hour that passed widened the gap. Officials were losing hope. But then, a stroke of luck, or fate, shifted everything. The surveillance breakthrough. A highway toll camera in Luxembourg flagged a black Volvo registered under a false identity. The driver kept his hat low, face partially turned away. But the posture, the jawline, the profile. Investigators were certain. It was him. European police mobilized instantly. German federal officers and Luxembourgish units formed a dragnet across the border. Helicopters lifted into the air. Patrols blocked every major road exiting the country. This time, Sekkaki couldn't fly away. He was trapped on the ground. The capture at dawn. At 6:12 a.m., on a quiet residential street in the town of Pfaffenthal, officers spotted the black Volvo parked crookedly along the curb. Engine warm. Doors slightly ajar. They approached slowly. A German officer whispered, "He's close." And then they saw him, walking out of a bakery, holding a brown paper bag, blending in like any other early morning customer. No disguise. No rush. Just calm, collected arrogance. For a second, no one moved. Then a commander shouted, "Sekkaki! Hand hawk! Hands up!" He froze. His eyes narrowed. He glanced left. He glanced right. Calculating. But there was nowhere to run. Officers swarmed him. He was forced to the ground. Handcuffed. Breathing hard, but smiling. Not a word of resistance. Just a smirk, as if he'd already won. The haunting ending. Back in Belgium, Sekkaki was placed into a maximum security facility under the highest level of surveillance. No windows. No contact. No chances. Reporters shouted questions as guards escorted him inside. Was it worth it? Who planned it? Would you do it again? Why the helicopter? Sekkaki stopped. Turned. And gave a final answer that echoed across Europe. Because I could. Then he disappeared into the steel door. Years later, investigators still debate the unanswered questions. Who funded the escape? How long had the plan been in motion? What was he building in that farmhouse? And most disturbing of all, did he ever intend to stay free, or was the chaos the real goal? One guard put it best. Some men escape prison. But others escape the world.